Well, Tom, it's good to see you, man. Now, you were telling me we were joking, so we kind of came and left. I think I left a little before you yesterday, and I got lucky. I had two maps going. I had Google Maps going, and I had Waze going, and it showed me that there was traffic ahead. I went through Biscoe, Arkansas, which I've never gone through before, and I jumped back on the highway back towards Memphis. You, Bob, and Wally hit a little traffic less yesterday, it sounds like.
We had some navigator issues, and I'm not going to call out any names, but our guy had the maps going because we wanted to check out the route at the I-55 bridge in Memphis, but we didn't catch that long line of red that was east of Biscoe and all the way to Brinkley. But you know what? We got hung up in traffic for about 30 minutes, and we did exit at Biscoe, but we made the smart move when we got it toward Brinkley, and we headed south, went through Helena, West Helena, across the bridge. And honestly, the traffic on the state highways in Mississippi, I'm not going to say how fast I was going in case there's any state troopers, but there wasn't a lot of traffic on a Sunday, and we made good time.
There you go. Tommy, I had told you that I thought I was going to pass through Oxford, but I was looking at the maps. There was no traffic in Memphis, and I got lucky because I know, like, Drew, obviously, is part of this program, this radio station, as a Memphis guy, has been through 2 hours of traffic. I've talked to people, but, man, I'm telling you guys, I went over that Memphis bridge like it was 6 lanes, like it was the other bridge open in that one, but I didn't hit any traffic yesterday. I got lucky.
Well, it's because the wreck happened behind you, and it blocked everything. I don't know. But that's the faster way, obviously, if you can do it that way. But so often there's bottlenecking or some issue, and with this whole I-40 fiasco, we just decided to go the other route, and we did go through Oxford. But I'm telling you, man, it was smooth sailing.
Hopefully, just a few weeks they'll have that baby open and get back to Memphis, in normal time. Because let's be honest, from Little Rock to Memphis is bad enough. With if they had a third bridge open, it'd be bad enough as it is. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. So outside of traffic, a lot to discuss this week. Tom, have been kicking around a couple things this morning. One, really intriguing games week number one. You don't even have to go to like 2, 3, or win the conference. There's some games that we're really excited about week one. And then just kind of percolating on the idea of, hey, what is LSU going to look like? What is South Carolina? What is Florida? As those are the teams that we'll get to hear from today. We'll hear from Austin Deculus, Derek Stingley Jr., and some of the other Florida and South Carolina players. We'll start with LSU first. I want to get your opinion because, to me, that school this year in this league has the widest gap of what they could be. I think they could be the second-best team in the West. I also think they could finish fifth. Where do you feel about the LSU Tigers? And I know we also have to factor in the off-season stuff and off-the-field issues that they've had to deal with as a football program. Tom, where do you come on LSU right now?
Yeah, that's a great take. I do think there's a wide disparity of potential outcomes for LSU. I think what the quarterback play yields, because even though their quarterback play was on, say, a higher level than Arkansas in 2018, 2019, they couldn't find the guy. But between the injuries of Miles Brennan and then Max and the kid who started against Arkansas, the big tall TJ.
Is he at Auburn now? Did he transfer?
He transferred. But I don't know who's going to come out of that. I mean, Miles Brennan ostensibly would. He was the starter. But the Johnson kid, Brad Johnson's son, Max, he lit a spark under them. They had some pretty good performances under him. And Finley, he did what he needed to do to win a couple of games like Arkansas. But they're going to be strong in the trenches, and I got to think that their defense is going to be better than the tragic D they played early in the season last year. So I think you're right. And because there are some unknowns, like how will Auburn respond to new leadership of Brian Harsin? Is there any chance that Mississippi State can get any better in year 2 under Leach? Is Arkansas going to be better? So I agree with you. It could go a lot of different ways for LSU.
Yeah, and when you look at LSU, what is is it you need to finish second, can't finish worse than third? It really, we look at the hot seat numbers, and Ed Orgeron seems to be the only coach in this league on a real hot seat this year. What is the bare minimum for Ed Orgeron this year, in your opinion, to move forward with LSU?
You know why his hot seat number is so high, y'all? Because I wrote about this in today's paper. Half of the coaches at this SEC Media Days, half of them, this will be their first time here. So half the coaching is new and still in the probationary period or whatever that grace period that you get in the SEC for 1 or 2 years.
The honeymoon phase.
The honeymoon. And Lane Kiffin has been here before, but it was a 1-year deal with Tennessee in 2009. So 8 coaches are going to be here, like, kind of for the first time. And I don't know what LSU leadership is thinking in terms of Ed Orgeron, but when you do wholesale and almost complete staff overhauls and you've gone through the off-the-field issues and whatever culpability they think Ed Orgeron might have had in those, then I do agree he's on the hottest seat. And I don't see how they get past Alabama this year. So maybe a second place is most needed. And I sometimes under the pressure, programs don't do very well. So I do think it's a real gut check season for LSU football.
Tommy's made the comparison. I think I have as well. I mean, you think back to Gene Chizik in 2010. They win the national championship with Cam Newton. The following year in 2011, you think about that great game that Arkansas had that beat him. 2012, they have a disastrous, horrendous season. He's gone. And that's 2 years removed after a national championship. And you think you'd have more job security than that. And Tommy and I have made the point, if they blow up, I mean, if it's a bad year, I could genuinely see, and not just that, because the off the field stuff too, they could use that as this is why we're letting you go.
Especially if they think they don't have to pay, if they could fire him with cause.
Yeah, fire him with cause. I mean, I could see this being Ed Orgeron's last year. Do I think it's going to? I think they're going to be somewhere in the middle of that 2 to 5 range, but I mean, they finished 5th, Tom, in the SEC. I could see the LSU administration. I guess it's still Scott Woodward who's their AD. I could see them making a move down there.
I could see it. But also, if you're LSU, you can look and see a clear path to number 2. You know what I'm talking about? Look, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, all in year 2 of their head coaches. You, if you're LSU, feel like, well, we're ahead of those guys. A&M is the question mark. Can they plug in the quarterback? What's his name? King something.
Max in it.
Are you talking about LSU?
LSU's.
Yeah.
No,
Haynes King. Max Johnson at LSU.
Max Johnson, LSU, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we got to get back in the groove, don't we, guys? But I do. But, yeah, if King can be the quarterback they think, and I would think that A&M's recruiting has got them good enough in the trenches that they're solid. But so LSU could look at the scale of the SEC West and say, hey, if we can beat A&M, challenge Alabama, then Ed Orgeron and this regime can keep going. But it could go south, and I do think that Arkansas is going to be a tough route. I mean, they almost beat them last year. Coulda, woulda, shoulda beat them if they'd had all their D linemen. And Ole Miss thinks that they're on the way up. Hey, it's tough sledding every year, and it's difficult to build up when you're the teams near the bottom in the SEC West.
Yeah, LSU starts out with UCLA, that game out in the Rose Bowl. You look at, they got McNeese State and Central Michigan before they play Mississippi State, Auburn, Kentucky to begin conference play. Florida's in front of the Razorback game. Ole Miss is. If some of these games, Alabama, of course, if some of these games don't go LSU's way, I could see this 10th game of the year for the Razorbacks on November the 13th. If Arkansas beat LSU and things have not went well to that point or up to expectations, I could see that Arkansas game maybe being a deciding game in more ways than just how your season's going for LSU as far as the future of their program. If Arkansas won that game,
Tommy's in what we call what do you call that? Deep speculation.
Oh yeah,
thought mode.
Well, I mean, hey, I'm like you. I could see LSU finishing second and winning 9 or 10 ball games this year, or I could see this thing if everybody let go of the rope and quit believing and could see handwriting on the wall. With 2 games to go and A&M being that last game and UL Monroe kind of being that non-conference game and a week to regroup type game where administration might move. You could see a lot of different scenarios playing out for LSU this year.
No question. And then, that Florida game obviously is going to be a big one. That's basically one of the better rivalries, certainly one of the better cross-division rivalries. Tennessee, Bama, Georgia, Auburn. That's one of the better cross-division rivalries in the league.
I think that, when you look at what Arkansas has, and I know this year it's a little different because you got to play Georgia, but you don't have to play them every year. Arkansas has, Tom, I think, an advantage. They get to play Missouri every year. And I know that Arkansas hadn't been able to beat them. You beat them one time since they joined the league back in 2015. You've had numerous chances that you've had, like you had against A&M. But at some point in time, Arkansas has to take advantage that they're getting Missouri every single year relative to not having to play Florida or Georgia or Tennessee when they were Tennessee in the day. I mean, this is an opponent. It used to be South Carolina, obviously. You got to start taking advantage if you're the Arkansas Razorback football team.
I think Arkansas fans, when Missouri joined the league, felt like we're a better program overall. Mm-hmm. We're certainly a better football program than Missouri is. It hasn't worked out that way.
Nope.
And so in a way, Missouri hasn't been super strong. Obviously, they came in the league and won the East a couple of times pretty early on under Pinkel. But if Arkansas is ever going to challenge in the West, then you clearly have to have your head above Missouri. Mm-hmm. And they don't think they haven't had the resources at Missouri. I don't know. They don't have a better recruiting base than Arkansas does. So, yeah, step one, in my view, you get ahead of the Mississippi schools, you get ahead of Missouri, and then you start climbing from there. And last year, they made a big step by getting ahead of both the Mississippi schools. So get ahead of your cross-conference rival, cross-division rival, Missouri, and start going from there. Yeah, it's just like the A&M series. They've had multiple games in the last 7 or 8 years. They could have or should have won several of those games, so including last year. So I also think that not being able to play Vanderbilt and Kentucky and South Carolina every year, you're in the same conference of those teams. You don't play them very frequently. Those are W's a lot of times for the teams in the East, and Arkansas just does not get that. And by the way, I'll just say it for one final time, the schedule makers burned Arkansas last year by giving them Georgia, knowing they were playing them again next year.
So are you going to be the one that asks of the Arkansas media, Greg Sankey, about that? Are you going to be?
Mark Womack is the guy who did the scheduling. And look, I know it was super tough. But the day that came out, and for the guys on the SEC network to say, hey, now keep in mind, this is taken in full entirety. You know, some teams might look harder than others, but this is a full – no, Arkansas got reamed on the reschedule.
Well, they balanced it out by giving you Georgia again this year, though, on the road.
Yeah, in Athens, when they could potentially and probably will be better than this year now that they've kind of solidified their quarterback. Another thing that we've talked about, so I mentioned Decalis and Stingley Jr. today. Those are of the Florida players, the South Carolina, but those are the guys that I actually want to hear from, because Stingley is as highly as he was freshman year, had a kind of a sophomore slump. That Tom, between Corral, Daniels, the Arkansas players, Myron Cunningham, and Grant Morgan, I know we have our opinion of what coaches want to hear. We got the rest of the week to hear from players as well. What kind of message do you think these players are going to be sending that they actually got to play this past year, and now it's going to be full crowds, full capacity? What do you think we'll hear from them this week?
Well, at least we're headed towards full crowd, full capacity. The way things are going, some of these numbers in Missouri and Arkansas and LSU, we got to get our stuff together. And I actually think Greg Sankey today might make a pretty impassioned plea for people who live in the footprint of the SEC. If you want to see your beloved football, go out and get vaccinated. Do the things that it takes to keep you and your loved ones safe. And I think don't even look at this as a political thing. Just do it for a safety and health thing. And so that's my message also right now. Bo Nix, he's taken a lot of criticism as the Auburn quarterback. Can he take them to the next level? And the answer, if you look at Auburn media last year, was no, he cannot take them to the next level. Well, he's the son of a legend at Auburn. He probably feels like he can. So big proving ground for Bo Nix, and I'm sure he'll get asked a lot of questions about that.
I was telling Tommy before the show, I had dinner with some old family friends who used to live across the street. The mom's an Alabama alum, the dad's an Auburn alum, and he was telling me the story of when Arkansas knocked out Patrick Nix back in the day, and I'm thinking, yeah, Bo's dad, that's kind of cool to have that. I mean, he was under the impression Joey Gatewood, now a Kentucky Wildcat, that Joey was the better quarterback of the two, but he felt like legacy, political side of things as a legacy got to play in, and that's why he felt like Bo. So now he's no longer there. If you look at Auburn, Auburn's got an All-American running back in Tank Bigsby, just an absolute stud. But what I was told last night, and some Auburn media could probably tell me this more, is they don't have anyone behind him. So if he's out, and they lost Schwartz, that speedster, I want to say they lost Seth Williams. They lost, obviously, Will Hastings, Little Rock kid. They've lost a lot of their talent as of late. You're bringing in Brian Harsin, new coach. Big Cat Bryant goes to UCF. I mean, Auburn's a game that Arkansas could get this year, and it's at home, too.
Auburn's a game Arkansas got last year.
Yeah.
And think about this. Tank Bigsby, without him in that game last year, I mean, he guys had hands on Tank Bigsby, and he was breaking a lot of tackles. That was probably about the worst tackling game Arkansas had. And it was in the rain and all that, so I understand. But that's a very interesting take on the Joey Gatewood, Bo Nix situation. You've seen flashes of Bo. I mean, his first game, he throws a touchdown pass, basically
against
the last
Oregon.
play of the game. Yep. And that's a great cross-sectional win for them. But he's also underperformed in some game. He also threw a backward spike in the Arkansas game, which was a knucklehead, boneheaded play, and it was recovered by Arkansas eventually. So who knows what you're going to – but I'll say this. This will be a great testing year for Kentucky. Mm-hmm. Do they have numbers to support a Joey Gatewood performing at his best? I don't know the answer to that, and I would tend to be a skeptic.
Yeah. Tommy, we were discussing earlier in the program just about Kentucky. What do you think's more wide open? Do you think it's the SEC East or the West? And I'm not talking about first place because I think Georgia and Alabama have it locked up. But what feels like more wide open for second place? Is it the West or the East?
Oh, probably the East. And I wouldn't just – Georgia's going to be strong, but I wouldn't just cede it to them. I mean, Florida certainly is better under Dan Mullen. Emory could be a difference maker at quarterback for them, mm-hmm. although Kyle Trask had a year. I mean, wow, fantastic year last year.
Backed up De'Aaron King in high school and then almost won a Heisman Trophy and put up just gaudy numbers.
Yeah, when you think back to basis around Arkansas references, but when you think back to Arkansas last year, the teams that did not have to, their quarterback didn't have to move much in the pocket. Mm-hmm. Kellen Mond was one of those, and he's a running quarterback, and he ran like one time, it seems like, and Trask ran a few times on design runs. Trask just sat back there and picked them apart, man. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, I do think the East is probably a little bit more open for number two. LSU and A&M probably are the most likely scenario to finish two in the West, but who knows? Maybe Arkansas puts it together. Maybe KJ Jefferson is the man. The O-line is better, mm-hmm. and they find a way to generate some pass rush. I've said it on here a million times. They don't generate pass rush. Teams will do like Florida and A&M did on them, and if they find a way to pass rush, maybe the linebackers help, maybe the safeties help, they can impact some teams.
All right, well, it should be an interesting week as Arkansas has to wait till their turn till the last day. But, Tom, we'll talk to you live from Radio Row coming up in a few more days here at SEC Media Days.
Outstanding. Good to be with you guys.
All right, thank you, Tom.